So here's an interesting quote by one of my mentors, Tad James. He said, negative emotions are a signal from your unconscious mind to focus on what you want. I love this quote. And when I put it up in the classroom, people often look at it like, what? So today, what we're talking about is the emotional component of that internal state. My name's Gina Mollicone-Long. This is your weekly Acme video. And we're going to be exploring the second component of the Performance Triad. You'll recall the Performance Triad, which is the Acme number 3. We call that the Accelerated Change Mechanisms of Excellence. Number 3 is the Performance Triad. Number 3, triad, easy to remember. And the 3 components of the triad are to focus on what you want, choose positive emotions, and have a physiology of excellence. So today we're talking about the emotional component, right? So in the Performance Triad, it's to choose positive emotions. Now, again, each of the 3 components of the Performance Triad, they're not rocket science. They're actually quite obvious. But you would be surprised at how many people don't do this. So you say choose positive emotions, and everybody goes, well, of course I choose positive emotions. But the majority of people are walking around completely dissociated from their emotions. And if they are actually connected to their emotions, they're not choosing positive emotions. They're addictedly and stuck in their negative emotions. They don't even realize it. Most people can't even name the emotions. So I make a joke when I'm in the classroom. Because I teach, I speak to CEOs and high-level performing coaches from around the world. And I'll say, if you don't know the names of the emotions, you should head down to your local library during story time and sit in on a little book they might read called Mad, Glad, Sad, and Afraid, or something like that. Because most people don't even know most people think that good is an emotion. It's not. Newsflash. Good is not an emotion. Good is the classification of the emotion, but it's not the emotion. Bad is not an emotion, it's classification. Emotions are things like joy, excitement, anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, curiosity. These are emotional states. So the majority of people on the planet have no rigor when it even comes to defining emotions, much less choosing positive ones. So positive is a classification, and positive emotions and negative emotions. And we could do a little lesson here. So positive emotions would be things like joy, happiness, curiosity, excitement, things like that. Bliss, peace, love, joy. Negative emotions would be things like anxiety, fear, sadness, hurt, guilt, irritation, agitation, and so on. And in an interesting book called Power versus Force, Dawkins writes about this threshold between what I call positive and negative emotions. And there's a threshold, and he's developed this really unique scale for calibrating the relative power of an emotion. And the line, interestingly enough, sort of shifts or flips right around pride. And again, I just always find it fascinating when I find examples of this learning in our sort of everyday or ancient or ordinary text. And so pride cometh before the fall is something that many of you have heard. And the line in this book separating positive and negative is right along pride, which I find fascinating. So anyways, choosing positive emotions. So what you want to do is choose positive, but most people think that ignoring negative is choosing positive, and that is not choosing positive emotions. So just because you are dissociated, and by that I mean disconnected or ignoring your negative emotions, that doesn't mean you're choosing positive emotions. That's actually a big problem, is this disintegration between the mental body and the emotional body. So in the Performance Triad, when I say choose positive emotions, what I mean to suggest here is that the emotions play a role, and their role in your body, if you will, your mind body, is to guide you. And so the way to think of it is like this. So you have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. And Freud called it the subconscious mind, but I don't like to call it subconscious because it implies like a lesser value. And The unconscious mind is not lesser than, believe me. Anyways, the conscious mind is the part of your mind that you are aware of. And, it is the goal setter. It's most of your sensory perception you are aware of. The logic functions, language, these are all conscious mind functions. Imagination, close your eyes, imagine a pink elephant. That's all done consciously. The unconscious part of your mind is all the other things that you're totally unaware of, right? Like, for example, perhaps you've eaten something today and your body's currently digesting. You're not consciously thinking about excreting enzymes and so on and so forth. That's all being taken care of by the unconscious part of your mind. Breathing, right? Functions, again, if we had to think about breathing, we wouldn't last very long. So the unconscious part of your mind has extremely important domains that it is in control of. And so domains of the unconscious mind, there are many, but I like to sort of meta categorize them into 3 big buckets. Your unconscious mind kind of runs your body. It's in charge of your body, all your functions, breathing, and so on and so forth. It is also in charge of all of your memory or time storage, all of your awareness as to the past, present, and future. And your unconscious mind is the domain of your emotions. Now, remember, when you are learning new behaviors, when you are changing, right, the first time you do it at that point C there, that breakthrough point, that's the first neural network, but then you need to wax on, wax off until it becomes a habit or a program. Once it becomes a habit or a program, what happens is it gets transferred from being conscious to being stored in the unconscious part of your mind as a memory or a program that you just call up as you need it. Think of it like the analogy is a computer, software program. So that's where all these programs that you use to do your life reside, in the unconscious part of your mind. So the emotions play a very important role because emotions are the domain of the unconscious mind, and therefore the unconscious mind is kind of in charge of, if you will, emotions. And the unconscious mind is where we store programs. So imagine this scenario. You say a goal with your conscious mind, you set your goal. I want to double my income. Now, you say that in the same way that you would say, I want to brush my teeth. And when you say, I want to brush my teeth, the unconscious mind searches for the program called brushing your teeth, and then you run the program called brushing your teeth. And as long as that program works well and your teeth get brushed and your teeth stay clean, then everything's functioning well. Let's say you say a new goal for yourself, totally new. This is a new thing you're doing. You're trying to change. So I want to double my income. Well, the unconscious mind looks for the program called doubling your income or earning income or whatever the program's called. And if it finds one that will deliver your goal, right, then the resulting guidance from the emotion system is positive. But if it can't find that program, then there's going to be a dichotomy by the goal that you're saying versus the resources you have in order to bring that goal into existence. And so there's going to be a communication from the unconscious mind that it doesn't have what it needs, and that's going to be the negative emotion. The negative emotion is a communication from your unconscious mind. Now, to take this idea further, and again, just so we're clear, these are metaphors and analogies. I have no idea if we crack open your mind, if this is what's actually happening. But when we use these mechanisms, remember mechanisms, then it helps us to make leaps and bounds in our results. So think of it like this. In the last video, we talked about you have to focus on what you want. Okay, and we differentiated between towards and away from. So don't fool yourself just because the words you use are positive. Okay, so I want to be fit doesn't mean that that's what you're focused on. You could be focused towards I want to be fit, but equally impacting your momentum is the focus I want to move away from being fat. Okay, so if I move away from what I don't want, it moves me in the same direction as being focused on what I do want. The problem is the focus, the actual focus of your attention is on what you do not want. And when the focus of your attention is on what you do not want, that's what you bring into your reality. So the unconscious mind goes bananas when this happens, and it serves up the negative emotion. So negative emotions are a warning sign from your unconscious mind to focus on what you want. So this is the sort of the whole reasoning behind it. So the emotions are a guidance system. They are a guiding force, and they're the most important force, because in order to get what you want, it's not enough to just think positively about it. We've talked about this a number of times now in many of these videos. It's not enough to just think positively. A side note, if you don't think positively, you don't have a chance, but it's not enough just to think positively. You have to have these positive emotions. Now, you don't get them from controlling your emotions or dissociating your emotions or negating your emotions or powering through your emotions. You cultivate this state by being focused on what you want and by paying attention to your emotional state to see if you're lying to yourself or if you're tricking yourself, if you're actually focusing on what you want. So what I did with this was I created this little tool called the Emotional Guidance System, and an acronym called SNAP, because remember, change happens in a snap. And when you're in a negative emotional state, you need to snap out of it because of the Performance Triad, and you need to snap into a positive emotion. So I created the Emotional Guidance System, right? And the acronym is SNAP. So whenever, every single time you feel a negative emotion, which means you've got to pay attention to your emotions, which means you've got to be associated, you need to snap out of it. SNAP, S stands for stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing because you're focused on what you don't want. The negative emotion means you are focused on what you don't want. So don't analyze it. Don't get too much into it. Just stop what you're doing. Then notice the negative emotion. So this is a conscious step for you to consciously pay attention to the negative emotion and say, okay, this is called anxiety, guilt, this is called frustration, whatever it's called. Stop what you're doing, notice it, name it, then alter it. So I teach a number of techniques, and over the course of these weeks and in the daily snaps, I'm going to be teaching all kinds of altering techniques that come from the mechanisms that we teach at Greatness U. But you probably already know some altering techniques from the things you've learned from the amazing teachers on this planet. So do whatever it is you need to do to alter that focus/emotion, because when you alter your focus, the emotion will change. Then when you find yourself confirmed in a positive emotional state, proceed. Snap, stop, notice, alter, proceed. Now, here's a quick altering technique. So let's say you're, dealing with a situation at work or at home, and you feel frustrated. So you stop what you're doing. Okay, snap out of that frustration. Stop what you're doing. Notice this is called frustration. Now, here's an altering technique. How do I alter that? Okay, well, literally, this is literally what you do. Everybody do this with me. So look up at the ceiling and smile really big like this. And then bring your eyes back down to whatever it is you're doing and proceed, only if the frustration has disappeared. Now, this is a sort of a teaser, if you will, to what's coming up when I start talking about the mechanistic model of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so I created this technique through my understanding and my expertise in NLP, because when you are frustrated, that's a negative emotion. Stop what you're doing. Notice it's frustration. Now, frustration is easy to disconnect. All you've got to do is look up. What that does is it disconnects the kinesthetic. It's a pause button. Look up and smile. Smiling is an anchor that is connected to all kinds of biochemicals that are good for you, right? Endorphins and dopamine and things like that. And so when you look up and smile, you pause the frustration and you bring back all of these chemicals, which then shifts your focus right onto what you want, even if it's momentary. And when you come back down, the frustration should be gone. So then you proceed. Now, if the frustration comes right back, you've got to snap out of it again. But that's just an example, one example of an altering technique Now you can insert any technique you've ever learned, breathing, yoga, humming, chanting, and I'm going to teach you a bunch, NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis down the road. We're going to insert a bunch of techniques here, but that's very chunked down. The big picture is that your emotions are a guidance. And in order to choose positive emotions, you need to pay attention, especially when the emotion you're feeling we would classify as negative. When that happens, snap out of it. Stop, notice, alter, proceed. That's how you complete this part of the performance triad. Focus on what you want, snap out of it. So if you got something out of this video, then please hit subscribe, become a regular subscriber so that you get the updates, but also like, share, and comment so people can get access to this info, because the more you spread it, the more it pops up into people's feeds, and that helps us get the information out there so that everybody can be revealing their greatness, right? It's greatnessyou.com.